What are your memories of Glasgow in the 1980s? Is there any chance they're similar to mine? We'll find out now on this episode of Astonishing Glasgow. In this episode, I'm going to take a wander down my memory lane and talk about some of the places and things that I remember from growing up in Glasgow in the 1980s. I was born in 1976, so the 80s were my primary school years. So right at the top of my memory lane is Holmley Primary School in Cathcart. I started at this school in 1981. I was in Mrs Renault's class and I finished in 1988. In between, I broke my nose right here on an icy slide one winter, and I'm pretty sure that round about here somewhere is my Return of the Jedi lunchbox. The school lay empty for around 20 years and looked like it was heading for demolition, like so many of Glasgow's old schools. But eventually it was converted into flats around 2020, and this is the door to my old primary 6 classroom. Sometimes it's helpful to be a postman. You can get into places you wouldn't normally. Round the corner from my school, literally a Rubik's Cube's throw away, is Rannoch Street where my nana lived. My dad and my nana moved here from Springburn in the 1960s, which is why I have some great cine-film footage of the street taken by my dad. This was the day my dad's Uncle Tommy came round in his brand new VW Dormobile. It's hardly changed in 60 years. I used to sit up here in the window watching the buses go by, but one of my strongest memories was looking out at the gantry crane, picking up stock at Weir's pumps over the other side of the River Cart. The gantry crane is now gone, and it wouldn't surprise me if the factory was replaced by housing in the next decade. I ended up doing work experience at Weir's whilst I was at secondary school, but as this video is about memories of the 1980s, we'll talk about the 90s if you like this video and want another one the same. In the summer I'd be out the back court of Rannoch Street, or just around the corner, past the site of Jay McCleavy's Bad Day at Holmley Park. When I played here, there were tennis courts in the running area, and the cast iron chute to go with the cast iron swing set. At the Holmley Road end of the park was the putting green, and just outside the Parkies building, where you got your club and ball, is where I fell on some glass, and still to this day I have a scar on my left hand. I should probably have gone to casualty, but the NHS medicine was nowhere near as effective as a double nugget or an oyster from Sam's Cafe further down Holmley Road. This next lot of memories are from this end of Victoria Road. From my nana's house we would have taken the 44 bus, or sometimes the 66 into town. Both would have passed along Vicky Road, and very occasionally we would have got off here and I could look longingly at the big ice cream cones that used to spin around in the window of the Queen's Cafe. I don't know where the cones are now, maybe they melted, but the cafe is now a loop and scoop and looks very swish. Nice that the stained glass above the doors survived. Now a memory that just came back to me as I was filming this video was right here. I think Bernardo's used to be a showroom for washing machines and cookers, and I have a very vague recollection of the pavement outside having British Gas or Electricity Board spelt out in granite tiles across the pavement. But it might have been a fever dream as I can't find any evidence. So let me know in the comments if it's something you remember. Prove that I'm not going mental. The shop that I was brought to in Vicky Road was on the other side, and it's now a Sainsbury's local. But in the 80s it was a branch of DM Hoy's, a clothing store, and it was right here that I got my very first pair of Puma Match trainers and a pair of stone washed Pepe jeans. Always the trendsetter. Now, whilst I navigate the cycle path to the next stop, please hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. It will really help my channel, and maybe someday I can afford to have lunch in the next location. We are now at Eglinton Toll at the bottom of Victoria Road, and I know exactly what most of you are thinking. It's one name, it's Ken Manners. For years, above this door was a guitar-shaped sign telling the world that Ken Manners would appear at the Star Bar every Sunday night. Bit of a legend on the south side, and the Star Bar is still famous for its 4-course lunch for £4. What a bargain. I must try it someday. Onwards and townwards. And at this point, the 44 bus goes left and the 66 would go straight on. I'm going to follow the route the 44 took for just now. I'll fill in the loop for the 66 bus at the end of the video. Passing the Lauriston Bar, which has just been sold and hopefully will be saved in its present form. This is a bit of the city that has some great looking buildings, but it is kind of isolated and forgotten about. I always kind of remember a pub called the Sou'Ester further up that I think had like a dartboard above the door, but vague memories, very vague memories. We'll carry on this journey to George V Bridge. Opened by George V in 1928, it's not the bridge that I particularly remember, it's what I could see from the bus. The first thing that springs to mind was the half a boat. It used to form the sign above the Minstrel's Bar, as seen in this picture from the old Glasgow pub website. But the building caught fire in 2005 and the boat started leaning out over the pavement, so it was removed for safety reasons. And I wonder where it ended up, but probably ended up in the tip. The other memory involves much larger boats, and it needs a detour from the 44 bus route. If I was really lucky, I got to ride the top deck of the bus. But in the 80s, the top deck of the bus was the smoking section, and it was fairly oppressive. So it wasn't very often I rode the top deck. But either way, I could look down the Clyde and see the merchant ships docked along the quay wall at General Terminus Quay. Now it's time for some astonishing Glasgow history. Opened in 1849, General Terminus Quay on the south side of the Clyde was built specifically to handle coal. By 1903, its 5 steam cranes were handling 800,000 tonnes of coal per year. The quay wall needed to be rebuilt between the 1920s and the 1930s. By the end of these works, most of the coal shipments were being handled at Rothesay Dock, further downstream in Clydebank. General Terminus Quay was redeveloped for the import of iron ore to be processed into steel at Ravenscraig between 1954 and 1957. That's when the 3 large unloading cranes known as the Three Sisters arrived on site. From the north side of the Clyde, there appears to be absolutely no evidence that these huge cranes ever existed. Ore handling moved to the Hunterston Ore Terminus in 1979, further down the coast near Largs, and the cranes were demolished between 1980 and 1981. Now if I cross over the river, is there any remaining sign that the massive site that was once the poster boy for British industry was ever here? The only trace I can find can be seen from Mavisbank Gardens. Mavisbank Gardens gets its name from Mavisbank Quay. The only trace left of Mavisbank Quay is the ceremonial foundation stone, sitting here dumped on the grass at the side of the road. But if you look the other way from this point, towards Paisley Road, you will see what's left of General Terminus Quay. In the bushes you can just make out the parapet of a railway bridge, and that carried Paisley Road over the main rail link to the quay. All the ore unloaded from the cargo ships would have left the site by rail, along a route now occupied by offices and large shops. You can just make out the path of the railway line as it ran parallel to Seward Street, by following the old wall until it disappears into another tunnel underneath Scotland Street. That's all that's left. The rails for the Three Sister cranes survived into the early 2000s, but with the expansion of Springfield Quay, the entertainment complex, they were removed or covered over in the last 10 years. History lesson over, and back to my memories of 1980s Glasgow. There was only really one reason why I'd end up in town with my parents in the 80s, and that was for school uniform. That usually meant visiting two shops. The first was What Every Woman Wants, which once stood right here. Now, I know I'm not a woman. You might just have noticed that, but the kids section was in this store, so we'd come here for school uniform. I also once bought a tennis racket in here that had all the string tension of wet pasta. Fairly useless it was. Now my brother, he was a few years older than me, and so we would end up in What Every Man Wants, which I think was in the Gap site right here. It was always good if I got all my uniform in Whateveries, because the alternative was all the way down the other end of Argyle Street, and it was a pretty long walk. We would usually stop at W.H. Smith's or John Menzies. W.H. Smith's is still there, but John Menzies was across the road. I think it's where the Sports Direct is now. And TK Maxx, I think that was a Dixon's electrical store, but I'm not 100% sure. It's difficult without the guy outside the Argyle market selling sports socks and lighters.
Sports socks! Hell, your sports socks! £2 for £1! £2 for £1!
And of course, we can't go past this piece of hallowed ground. This is where for years you could watch the Robot Guy. I think he ended up on television presenting That's Life. Again, I'm not 100% sure. Finally, we would reach the other school uniform shop. This used to be C&A, and as I've always been tall and skinny, they would be one of the places that would have trousers that would fit my weird size. A jam donut and an iron brew would usually be a treat on the cafe on the top floor, but I never got a shot on the ride-on horse that sat in the stairwell outside the cafe. Now, please tell me if you remember that, so that I know that it's not another one of my fever dreams. It was huge as far as I remember, big black horse, but you can fill in the blanks if I've remembered it wrongly. If we were up this end of town anyway, we'd usually pop into Candleriggs Market. This was once the city's fruit market, and when it was Candleriggs Market, it was where my mum brought us to buy her net curtains. It's now a public courtyard surrounded by bars and restaurants, and usually hosts a craft fair or an art fair or two during the weekends. I realise this video is rapidly going from a trip down memory lane to a massive road trip down memory motorway, so it's time to cover the last few locations so that you can all be on your merry way. This is a very vague memory, as I was only ever here once as far as I know, and it was just before it closed, but the crazy house in the Market building certainly left its mark. It was a clothing store, but I remember it for its laughing clowns, dancing bears, and a huge animatronic skeleton that sang dem bones, dem, dry bones. If you have better memories, let me know in the comments, but for the moment, my bones are frozen bones. So I'm heading home, and as promised, I'm following the route of the 66 bus, which crossed Victoria Bridge and had a great view of the clipper ship the Carrick, which was berthed here from 1948 to 1989. She was used as the headquarters of the Royal Naval Reserve Club, but when she started to take on water and would regularly be seen leaning to the left, she was designated a listed building to save her for future generations. Plans were hatched to move her to the Scottish Maritime Museum for restoration. She made it under the bridges and as far as Yorkhill Quay and then duly sank. She was recovered from the bottom of the Clyde the following year and brought to a slipway in Irvine, but funding never really materialised, and when developers wanted to build flats where she was stored, it looked like she was about to be destroyed. In the end, Australia stepped in and saved her. She had travelled the route between the UK and Australia as a trading ship, under the name the City of Adelaide, and this is exactly where she is now. She's being restored in Adelaide after surviving the journey on a barge, and I'd really love to someday have the chance to go and what are the chances that I'd be making a video about Glasgow in the 1980s and a train from that time would be rolling into the central station? An incredible coincidence, and a good place to finish this video before it gets too dark and my fingers get far too cold to hold the camera. As I start the cycle home, please remember to hit that thumbs up button if you've enjoyed the video, and hit the subscribe button to get notified when the next video goes live. It really helps my channel, so even if you never want to watch another one of my videos, hit the button anyway, it costs nothing. If you want to help me make more videos, you can make a donation through the super thanks button below. Every penny is gratefully received. And these are the superstars who have made a donation since the last episode. Thank you very much. Don't forget to get in touch with your memories from the corners of your mind. The misty watercoloured memories of the way we were. All the links to social media are down below or use the comments section. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time in astonishing Glasgow. Right, I'm off to Sam's for a Quenchy Cup, a marathon and a packet of Opal fruits. See you all.